Welcome to Intermarine Africa, New Mexico, the channel where we look at questions of wonder from the perspectives of faith and reason, philosophy and theology. I'm your host, Daniel Kelly, and in this special bonus episode, I'm responding to a work by Joe Heschmeyer. He's the proprietor of the podcast Shameless Popery, and he's an apologist for Catholic answers. And I really enjoy his work, but he had a very troubling work recently where he tried to exclude, he said that the church should exclude a class of people from being sponsors, from being godparents. And I found this very troubling, especially because this class of people already in the secular law is not a protected class of people. They're not recognized by secular law. And he would know this. He's a lawyer, and he's trying to exclude them also from even being godparents in a church setting. So I was very concerned about this, and I looked online to see if there were any other responses, and there was none that I could find. So even though this channel tries to avoid controversy, here I offer my. So, Joe Heschmeyer, the proprietor of Shameless Popery, says this in an article that he writes on Catholic.com. He's looking at a 17th century retelling of the story of Cinderella, and he has this objection. Hold on a moment. Her godmother is a fairy? The first canonical problem this raises is the whole idea of having a non-human godmother. A godparent, technically called a sponsor in canon law, must be a Catholic who has been confirmed and has already received the most holy sacrament of the Eucharist, and who leads a life of faith in keeping with the function to be taken on. And that's from the Code of Canon Law, Canon 874, Section 1.3. Are we to believe that this fairy has been baptized and confirmed and has received her first communion? So this is his first objection. He has another one that we're going to get to. But that basically it's that because of this person's, they're a fairy, that they should be excluded from being a godparent. But what I don't think he's realizing is he's quoting the Code of Canon Law, which is not a universal divine law. It's made for human beings, and in fact, even a specific portion of human beings, right? The Eastern Church has the Code of Canons of the Eastern Church. So when it envisions sponsors, it's talking about human sponsors. And if we were going to examine what non-humans, whether non-humans are able to receive the Eucharist or to be confirmed as members of the body of Christ, or maybe they're joined to Christ's body in another way, maybe they're joined to the church in a different way, we'd have to discern that on a case-by-case basis. And he hasn't shown that this law applies to non-humans, especially fairy people. So I don't think this objection to them being godparents is actually very good. If we met an alien race, for example, we might find out that they could be baptized and confirmed. Maybe fairies could be, but the bishops and the magisterium would have to rule on that separately from just this code canon. Just like we know for angels, they're a non-human race, they're joined to the body of Christ in a separate way than the way we are, and they are part of the church, but the Code of Canon law is not written for them, it's written for human beings. So just like that, if we found non-human intelligences or fairies, we would have to look to the canons that the church would make for them. I don't think this is a very good argument to exclude them from being godparents, but he has another objection, and I quote, "The second canonical problem is that fairies are notorious dabblers in magic. Lest you think this is an uncharitable stereotype," he's trying to be fair, "I'll point you to the text. Cinderella went at once to gather the finest she could get, and brought it to her godmother, not being able to imagine how this pumpkin could help her to go to the ball. Her godmother scooped out all the inside of it, leaving nothing but the rind. Then she struck it with her wand, and the pumpkin was instantly turned into a fine gilded coach. Magic wands, sorcery, what kind of godmother doesn't realize that," and he's quoting, "all practices of magic or sorcery by which one attempts to tame occult powers, so as to place them at one's service and have a supernatural power over others, even if this were for the sake of restoring health, are gravely contrary to the virtue of religion." And he's quoting from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, 21:17. This hardly sounds like someone who leads a life of faith in keeping with her role as Cinderella's godmother. And again, I think he's misinterpreting what the Catechism says here, applying our modern understanding of magic to a 17th century text. What he doesn't understand, though, is there's a lot of things that could seem like magic that don't fall under this. to a 17th century person. If he went back in time and showed him an automobile, that might seem like magic, or any number of technological things, but that doesn't mean they're wrong, they're morally wrong. In the same way, an angel, a non-human thing, could, through God's will, work wonders for a person, and that's not magic. They could, in God's will, do something that seems magical to a person that doesn't have the right framework, but would actually be leading them closer to God. And that's the same thing. Fairy might have natural powers that are beyond what the human person can do, but they're not preternatural. They're not like demon powers that we're not allowed to mess with, but they could have powers just like an alien. What if an alien had the ability to move stuff with its mind? That's not without outside of the realm of possibility. St. Thomas thought even human beings could do it, and maybe they can. I haven't looked into that. I'll put some links for Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World where he looks at some of this. But yeah, maybe humans could, but it's not hard to imagine that a fairy could, with their natural abilities that God gives them, produce things that we might consider wondrous. That doesn't mean they're magic. It doesn't mean they're dabbling in occult powers. So this is my response to Joe Heschmeyer, and if he wants to dialogue more about this, I'm happy to do a dialogue. But I think it's important that we not exclude classes of people from being godparents in the church just because of our own worldview and our own preconceived notions. Thank you, and God bless.